The Galactic Dominion did not conquer planets. They devoured them. When their vast war machine descended upon Earth, the galaxy expected the same result as every other world that had defied the Dominion: swift, brutal annihilation. But humanity was not like the others. The invasion began with orbital bombardments that turned cities into molten craters. Billions perished in the opening days. Then came the planetary dropships, towering constructs of steel and fire, unleashing Dominion warbeasts and cybernetic legions upon what remained of Earth's armies. The Dominion had done this countless times before, and the results had always been the same: resistance shattered, rulers executed, and entire populations enslaved or exterminated. But Earth did not break. The first real sign of trouble for the Dominion came in the Battle of the Ruined Atlantic, where remnants of the Terran Defense Forces, believed to be scattered and broken, ambushed Dominion warships using submarine-based railgun strikes. The Dominion, accustomed to enemies fighting in open, predictable engagements, had never encountered warfare like this. Their towering mechs were torn apart by asymmetric guerrilla tactics. Their supply lines were ambushed in the shadows of ruined megacities. And then the Dominion made their greatest mistake. In a broadcast across the burning world, Supreme Commander Elias Vex, one of Earth's last remaining military leaders, made his declaration. "You came here expecting us to surrender. You thought we would kneel. That was your mistake. We are not fighting for survival anymore. We are fighting for vengeance." Across the planet, the survivors of humanity answered his call. Cities that had been declared lifeless rose in defiance. Civilians turned into insurgents, scientists weaponized whatever they could salvage, and soldiers fought as though their every bullet carried the weight of a fallen world. In the ruins of Berlin, Dominion commanders were assassinated by snipers who had been tracking them for weeks. In the ashes of New York, Dominion shock troopers were hunted by human survivors, dragged into the sewers, and executed with their own weapons. The war that should have lasted weeks stretched into years. The Dominion responded with brutality. They deployed their Sunbreakers, orbital weapons capable of erasing entire continents. But before they could fire upon the remaining strongholds, human infiltrators launched a suicide mission, hijacking Dominion vessels and crashing them into the Sunbreakers themselves. The Dominion could not understand it. No species had ever resisted them like this. No species had ever fought them with such reckless, calculated rage. Yet, despite every victory, Earth was dying. Every battle cost them more than they could replace. Every Dominion ship destroyed was replaced by a dozen more. The Dominion had time, resources, an empire spanning the stars. Humanity had only its warriors and its rage. And then came the day they could fight no more. The last of Earth's great cities fell. The Dominion declared victory. Elias Vex and the surviving warriors of Earth vanished into deep space. The galaxy believed the war was over. They were wrong. Humanity was not defeated. It was only preparing for its return. Elias Vex stared out from the bridge of the stolen Dominion battlecruiser, watching the distant glow of Earth's smoldering remains. The once thriving blue planet was now little more than a graveyard, its surface a charred ruin under the Dominion's rule. The enemy believed humanity to be broken, its survivors scattered, its warriors lost. They had no idea what was coming. The remnants of Earth's forces had not perished with their homeworld. They had escaped into the void, their fleets fragmented, their armies reduced to insurgents fighting in the shadows of occupied colonies. But in their exile, something new was forming, a war machine unlike any the galaxy had seen. Vex turned away from the viewport, his heavy boots echoing across the steel floor as he walked toward the gathered warlords, commanders, operatives, and former leaders of Earth's shattered military. They were battered, scared, and weary, but none of them looked defeated. If anything, their eyes burned with something the Dominion had never faced before: rage. "Earth is gone," Vex said, his voice steady but edged with steel. But humanity is not. The gathered leaders remained silent, listening. "We have spent years fighting for survival. No more. His gaze swept across the room. From this moment forward, we fight for something else. Not for freedom. Not for peace. We fight for war itself. For the destruction of the Dominion. For vengeance. A murmur rippled through the room. Some nodded. Others clenched their fists. The Dominion sees us as defeated, he continued. They have moved on. Their fleet's already turning toward their next conquest. That is their mistake. We will remind them that Earth did not breed diplomats. It bred killers, warlords, kings of war. General Atreus Kane, a former commander of Earth's orbital defense, stepped forward. His face was lined with old scars, his cybernetic arm a reminder of the battles he had survived. We don't have the numbers to take them head-on, he said. Not yet. Vex smirked. Then we don't fight them head-on. He activated a holo display, revealing a strategic map of Dominion-controlled space. Several key locations flickered in red: fueling stations, shipyards, communications hubs. We hit them where they're weakest. We turn their own empire against them. We burn their supply lines. We assassinate their officers. We make every planet they hold a war zone. A sharp laugh came from the shadows. Commander Sarah Volkova, leader of the infamous Valkyrie insurgents, leaned forward. Terror warfare, she mused. I like it. It's not terror, Vex corrected. It's calculated devastation. Kane grunted in approval. You have a plan, then. Vex's grin was nothing short of predatory. Our first target is Outpost Epsilon 9, a Dominion fleet yard. If we take it, we gain warships, weapons, and most importantly, a foothold. Volkova smirked. Then what the hell are we waiting for? The war for vengeance had begun. The Dominion fleet yard at Outpost Epsilon 9 hung in the void above a dead moon, a gleaming fortress of steel and weaponry. Massive dry docks held newly constructed warships waiting for deployment. Hundreds of Dominion soldiers patrolled the facility, their guards down, secure in their belief that humanity was nothing more than scattered survivors barely clinging to life. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Inside the cloaked human battlecruiser drifting at the edge of the system, Elias Vex stood with his warlords in the dim glow of the tactical holotable. The plan was as reckless as it was brilliant. Strike hard, strike fast, and leave nothing but wreckage. We take this station, and we carve our first wound into the Dominion, Vex said, his voice like a blade. No survivors, no mercy. Aboard the stolen Dominion transport, Commander Sarah Volkova and her infiltration team moved through the enemy station's underbelly, hidden in the shadows. Their stolen Dominion armor fooled the automated scans, but not the patrols. When a squad of Dominion guards blocked their path, the humans struck without hesitation. Knives to throats, suppressed rounds to skulls. The bodies were gone before they hit the floor. They reached the station's control center. Volkova placed a device on the main terminal and activated it. Across the station, alarms remained silent, but security doors flickered open, exposing key targets. That was the signal. From the void, human warships decloaked. Sleek, stolen Dominion vessels, now bearing the scars and insignias of Earth's survivors. Railguns roared, missiles streaked through the darkness, and in seconds, the fleet yard became a battlefield. Hit them hard. General Atreus Kane barked over the comms, his warship leading the charge. No Dominion ships leave this system. The Dominion, caught off guard, scrambled to react. Fighters launched in chaos, anti-air turrets swiveled wildly. But it was too late. Human boarding teams smashed into hangars, weapons blazing. Dominion officers barely had time to raise alarms before they were cut down by shock troops. Volkova's team moved fast, gunning down resistance in the control center. A Dominion admiral, face twisted in disbelief, reached for his comms. You're supposed to be dead, he stammered. Volkova put a bullet through his skull. Guess you got bad intel. With the command center secured, she activated the fleet yard's defense turrets. turning them against the remaining Dominion warships. Plasma beams tore through their own ships as the battlefield became a massacre. Vex strode through the wreckage of the main hangar, stepping over Dominion corpses. His forces had taken the station in under an hour. He activated his comms. Outpost Epsilon 9 is ours. A moment of silence passed over the comms. Then cheers erupted from the human fleet. The first Dominion stronghold had fallen. The galaxy had ignored humanity for too long. Now they would learn what happened when you try to erase a species born for war. And this was only the beginning. The fall of Outpost Epsilon 9 sent shockwaves through the Dominion. It was not just another lost station. It was a symbol of something far worse. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was fighting back. Elias Vex stood in the war room of his newly claimed fleet yard, surrounded by holographic projections of Dominion supply routes, warship movements, and planetary strongholds. His warlords gathered around him. Kane, Volkova, and the other commanders of Earth's shattered legions. The scent of burnt metal and blood still lingered in the station's halls, a testament to their first true victory. But Vex was not celebrating. They will strike back soon, and they will strike hard. Kane growled, arms crossed. We need to move before they regroup. They'll send more than warships, Volkova added. They'll send the warmines. The gods of war. A hush settled over the room. Everyone knew what that meant. The warmines were the Dominion's ultimate tacticians, warlords constructed from the consciousness of their greatest fallen generals, immortal minds that had led countless conquests across the galaxy. They did not make mistakes. They did not hesitate. And once the Dominion unleashed them, no enemy had ever survived. Until now. Vex studied the star map, his fingers tightening into a fist. Then we take them off the board before they even begin to move. Kane frowned. And how the hell do we do that? Vex's eyes burned with something dark. We corrupt them. The warlords exchanged glances. You want to hack the warmines? Volkova asked, skeptical. That's impossible. Their cores are housed deep within Tartarus Prime, the Dominion's most secure fortress world. Vex smirked. Nothing is impossible. We have something they've never encountered before. He turned to the far side of the war room, where a massive reinforced containment chamber stood. Inside, restrained in gravitic locks, was a Dominion strategist AI, a stolen construct taken from Epsilon 9's databanks. It pulsed with eerie blue light, its formless consciousness trapped inside human-made firewalls. This AI will give us the keys to Tartarus Prime, Vex continued. We infiltrate the system, inject our virus, and turn the warmines against their own empire. Volkova whistled low. You want to rewrite the minds of the greatest military strategists in the galaxy. Bold move. It's not just bold, Kane muttered, shaking his head. It's suicide. Vex stepped forward, his voice deadly calm. We don't win this war by fighting like soldiers. We win it by thinking like predators. His gaze swept over his commanders. The Dominion doesn't fear death. They fear losing control. We will take their gods of war and turn them into traitors. A slow grin spread across Volkova's face. I like it. Kane sighed, then cracked his knuckles. Then let's go make some gods bleed. The war for vengeance was about to become a war for domination. Tartarus Prime was more than a fortress. It was a tomb for the weak. A world encased in layers of defense grids, impenetrable energy shields, and orbital sentinels that could tear apart entire fleets. Beneath its iron surface, the Dominion's greatest war minds slumbered, stored in vast data vaults, their consciousness sculpting the Empire's military future. No enemy had ever set foot on Tartarus Prime. Until now. From the bridge of his captured Dominion warship, Elias Vex watched the planet loom closer, its surface glowing with defense barriers that shimmered like molten glass. Around it, the Dominion's hell-forged fleet patrolled, 1,000 ships strong, their battle-worn hulls testaments to centuries of conquest. The human fleet, small, outgunned, and technically already dead, drifted within the wreckage of an old Dominion battle, its ships silent, engines cold. Exactly as planned. Inside the lead strike ship, Commander Sarah Volkova sat strapped into an infiltration pod, her breath steady as the countdown reached 0. Across the fleet, dozens of human operatives did the same, their pods disguised as debris. Silent bullets aimed at the Dominion's brain. Then the pods fired. Like shadows cutting through the void, they streaked toward Tartarus Prime, slipping past sensors and automated defenses. The fleet remained silent, drifting like ghosts, while Dominion warships held their positions, unaware that death was already inside their walls. Impact. Volkova's pod slammed into a hidden maintenance shaft on the planet's surface. Explosive bolts detonated outward, carving a hole through reinforced steel. She unstrapped herself, pulse rifle in hand, and stepped into the darkness. Around her, other operatives emerged, their weapons gleaming under the dim red lights of the Dominion facility. Phase 1 complete, she whispered into comms. We're inside. Deep in the command ship, Vex watched the data stream. So far, so good. But he knew what was coming. Because the Dominion had already begun to suspect something. The Hellforged fleet suddenly altered formation, its leading battleships turning their cannons toward the wreckage field where the human fleet drifted. A warning shot cut through the void, a burst of plasma that shredded one of the derelict husks nearby. Vex smirked. They know something's wrong. Kane grunted beside him. What's the call? Vex activated comms to the fleet. His voice was ice cold. We wake the dead. Engines flared to life. Railguns roared. The human fleet, which had seemed lifeless mere seconds ago, suddenly came alive in a blaze of gunfire and fury. The first Dominion warship exploded in a chain of detonations before it could even react. The trap was sprung. Down below, inside the core of Tartarus Prime, Volkova and her team fought their way toward the Warmind vaults. Dominion enforcers rushed to intercept them, but the humans moved like ghosts, cutting through defenses with brutal precision. They had one mission: inject the virus, corrupt the gods, end the Dominion. And they had already begun. Inside the Dominion's most secure fortress, alarms blared, red warning lights flashing across the towering data vaults that housed the Warminds, the AI warlords who had guided the Dominion's conquests for centuries. The halls of the complex trembled under the weight of battle as Sarah Volkova and her team carved their way toward the inner sanctum. Dominion shock troopers poured into the corridors, but they were too slow. Volkova's squad fought with precision, each shot placed to cripple, not kill, not out of mercy, but because a wounded enemy slowed the others down. We're at the core vault, Volkova shouted into comms as she slapped an explosive charge onto the reinforced door, blowing it now. A deafening boom rocked the facility, sending molten debris flying in all directions. Inside, the Warmind servers pulsed with eerie blue light, each containment chamber holding an intelligence so vast, so powerful that even Dominion commanders feared them. And now, humanity would make them into weapons of its own. Volkova sprinted forward, slamming a data spike into the nearest terminal. Virus deploying. Give me 30 seconds. 30 seconds was a long time in war. Outside, in orbit, the battle had turned into a maelstrom of destruction. The human fleet, vastly outnumbered, fought like devils, darting between larger Dominion warships, hitting weak spots with surgical brutality. On the bridge of his flagship, the Elias Vex watched it all unfold. Status, he demanded over comms. Kane's voice came through, strained but steady. We're losing ships. We need an exit strategy. Fast. Vex clenched his jaw. It all depended on Volkova. If the Warmind takeover failed, this battle, this entire war, would end with humanity wiped from existence. Inside the data vault, the Dominion's internal defense systems activated. Sentinels, towering, cybernetic war machines, emerged from hidden alcoves, their glowing plasma blades humming to life. Volkova barely had time to duck as a blade slashed through the air where her head had been a moment ago. "We're out of time," one of her operatives shouted, firing into the approaching sentinels. The bullets pinged off their armor uselessly. Volkova gritted her teeth and turned to the data spike terminal. The virus was at 97%. Another sentinel lunged. A plasma blade sliced through one of her squad mates, cutting him in half. 99%. More Dominion forces flooded into the chamber, their weapons raised. Volkova grabbed a pulse grenade and threw it into the cluster. It detonated midair, sending bodies flying. 100%. The Warmans awakened. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every light in the facility flickered. The glowing blue containment chambers pulsed red. And then the screaming started. Across Tartarus Prime, Dominion officers collapsed, clutching their heads as the Warmans turned on them. Ships in orbit spun out of control as their eye-controlled systems revolted. Entire Dominion fleets fell into chaos. On the bridge, Vex watched as Dominion warships suddenly began firing on each other. He smiled. It's over. The skies burned as Dominion warships tore into each other, their once unbreakable formations now collapsing in total chaos. The Warmans, now under human control, twisted the Dominion's own strategic brilliance against them. Entire fleets shut down, their weapons turning on their allies in a perfect storm of betrayal. On the surface, Sarah Volkova and her squad watched as Dominion forces dropped their weapons in agony. Their neural links to the Warmans now poisoned, feeding them only madness and death. Officers screamed as their own AI-driven implants rebelled, turning their bodies into twitching husks. Volkova wiped blood from her forehead and activated her comm. "Vex, the Warmans are ours. The Dominion is eating itself alive." On the bridge of his flagship, Elias Vex stood among his warlords, staring at the carnage through the massive viewport. Ships detonated in chain reactions, their hulls splitting open like ruptured corpses. The Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries, believing itself invincible. And now, at the hands of humanity, it was dying. Kane exhaled, watching an enemy dreadnought get torn apart by its own automated defenses. "I almost feel bad for them." Vex didn't look away from the destruction. "Don't." The battle was already won, but one last piece remained. The Dominion High Council, the architects of Earth's destruction, were still alive, buried deep within the Blackened throne, their citadel at the heart of their empire. With their Warmans gone, they were defenseless, and Vex had no intention of giving them time to recover. "Set course for the Dominion homeworld." His voice was calm. "Absolute. We end them now." The warlords exchanged glances. Kane smirked. Volkova nodded. The last war of humanity was about to begin. On the Dominion throne world of Valus Prime, the High Council trembled. For the first time in recorded history, their war fleets did not answer their calls. Holograms flickered in the Grand War Chamber, showing the massacre at Tartarus Prime. The Warmans, their greatest weapons, had turned against them. Fleets once thought unstoppable were burning. Their empire, unbreakable, eternal, was now on the verge of annihilation. The Supreme Strategos, a towering figure clad in ceremonial warplate, slammed his fist against the council table. "This cannot be. Humanity is broken. They are nothing." A trembling advisor spoke, voice weak. "Then why are they at our gates?" The Strategos turned and saw the impossible. Through the reinforced windows of the throne chamber, he watched as human warships emerged from hyperspace. At their head, a massive captured Dominion dreadnought bore a new insignia, one carved in blood and fire, the sigil of the last kings of war. The invasion of Valus Prime had begun, and humanity was here to claim the Blackened throne. The once mighty fleets of the Dominion were now little more than dying embers, ships gutted from the inside by the Warmans that had once served them. Human warships, battered but unbroken, descended upon the throne world, their railguns hammering down against planetary defenses. Elias Vex stood on the bridge of his captured Dominion dreadnought, watching as drop pods and warships rained fire upon the planet's surface. His voice was calm, but behind his eyes burned the unquenchable fire of vengeance. "This is the end of them," he murmured. Across the ruined cities of Valos Prime, Dominion soldiers fought in desperation. But without their warmans, without their fleets, they were no longer conquerors. They were prey. On the surface, Sarah Volkova led the charge through the last defensive perimeter surrounding the Blackened throne, the ancient citadel where the Dominion's rulers cowered. Dominion war mechs, once the terrors of 100 battlefields, fell in seconds to humanity's newfound technological edge. Her pulse rifle burned white-hot as she gunned down a line of Dominion shock troopers, their armor cracking beneath the precision of Earth-forged weapons. The path to the throne room was soaked in alien blood. The doors shattered inward with a final explosive charge. Inside, the High Council stood in silent horror as Elias Vex entered, Volkova and Kane flanking him, their weapons raised. The Supreme Strategos, once the master of war, fell to his knees. His face twisted, not in fear, but in confusion. How had this happened? How had the cattle broken their chains? Vex stepped forward, looking down at the fallen ruler. "You burned our world. You butchered our people. You thought we were finished." His voice was quiet, deadly. He raised his pistol. "You were wrong." The shot rang out, and the Supreme Strategos collapsed, lifeless. The Dominion was dead. A silence hung over the throne room. The war was over. For the first time in history, humanity was no longer hunted, no longer prey. Volkova turned to Vex. "What now?" Vex stared at the throne, the Blackened throne, ornate, ancient, once the seat of an empire that had ruled for millennia. He sat down. The throne was cold beneath him. The weight of history, of war, settled upon his shoulders. He exhaled slowly. "Now," he said, "we rule." Beyond the shattered windows, the human fleet loomed over the broken world, and across the stars, a new empire was born. One forged in fire. One that would never kneel again. Humanity had claimed its rightful place, and the galaxy would never forget.